Hello, in today's video I would like to show you how to crochet the Tunisian top loop stitch. This is a very slight modification of the Tunisian simple stitch, but it creates a very beautiful effect and is very easy to make. The good thing about this stitch is that it curves very little and is also really not bulky like many Tunisian crochet stitches. To crochet my swatch, I will be using a 8mm crochet hook. Can find 8mm crochet hook, and I'm using paint box yarn Simply Aran in this mint color. So let's get started. Let's start by making a foundation row with 15 stitches. So I'm going to chain 15. And then I will insert my hook into the back bump of the second chain from my hook. And in each back bump. Alright, so now that we have 15 loops on our hook, we can do the first return pass for the foundation chain. So we yarn over and pull through the first loop, and then we yarn over, pull through two, all the way across. So now that our foundation is ready, we can actually start working the pattern itself. So for the top loop stitch, we will be working basically in the loops, in these top loops that are in between each stitch. So normally you would work the Tunisian simple stitch, let's say in this front bar of the stitch. Instead, for the top loop stitch, we will be working in these top bars that are in between the actual stitches. Okay, so for the first row, we will start by inserting the hook really into this very first top loop. Okay, so we start working in the space, so in the chain between the very first stitch and the second one. So we go into that top loop, yarn over and pull up a loop. Okay, pull the yarn tightly around your hook so that first loop also gets tightened up. And then we continue by inserting our hook in this next top loop here, into this chain. And then in the next one, the next. We continue like this until we have 2 stitches left. Okay, so now if you see, I stopped at this last, like I only have this space remaining in between the semi-last and the last stitch. So the reason why I stopped is that if you count now, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 stitches. So you see that if we still make one stitch here and then we work the last stitch, we would end up with 1 more stitch compared to when we started. So of course the reason is because we're working shifted stitches, okay, a bit like the full stitch. So to fix that, we will leave this top loop unworked, and we will directly work the last stitch under both vertical bars on the side. Okay, so this way we have 15 stitches. And now we can do a regular return pass. So we yarn over, pull through the first loop, and then yarn over, pull through two, until the end. So this was the first repeat of our pattern. Now we're ready to see the next repeat. So since in the previous one, you see we left this space open, and we worked the very first stitch in the, you know, in this space, the very first one. For this next row, we're going to shift the pattern. So we're going to leave this one unworked. So we will start by inserting the hook into this second top loop between, you know, the second and the third stitch. Okay, we go there, and then we will work in each top loop, including this very last one. Okay, so now you see here at the very last chain between the semi-last and the last stitch, I'm still going to work one stitch, and then I will work the last stitch by inserting the hook under both vertical bars on the side. So this way you count, we still have 15 loops, 15 stitches on our hook, and we work a regular Tunisian return pass. So to continue growing this pattern, all you need to do is to keep repeating these two rows that we saw, this first one and the second one. So let's see that once more together. So now we need to repeat this same, the first row. So it means that we have to start working our stitches starting from this very first chain between the first and the second stitch. So we go into this top loop and we pick up a loop. We pick up a loop in each of the next chains between stitches. However, so when you get to the last chain between the semi-last and the last stitch, we skip this top loop and we work directly the last stitch under both vertical bars and return pass. Now for the next row we repeat what we saw for the second row. So we skip the first top chain and we go and work directly into this second one. And we work into all of the remaining top loops, including that last one. And then we work the last stitch under both vertical bars and standard Tunisian return. When you have just a few stitches, like in this case we just have 15, it's very easy to remember what you did in the previous row. So we now know that in the previous row we started from the second space, so we know that now we would have to start from the first one. But if you're working with a larger pattern, like, you might forget at which point you are, which repeat you need to do. So the easy way to see where you are, what you need to do for the next row, is to look at this second stitch, because you see the first one is always, of course, the edge of our work, but the second stitch can really give you an indication, because you see for this last row that we worked, we started from the second space, and you see that this stitch is a bit more inside compared to this other one. So we have a sort of ladder, you see, like we have 1, 2, 1, 2. So if you see that you have this stitch a bit more inside, you know that you have to start the next row from this very first chain in between the first and the second stitch. On the other hand, when you have like a stitch which is like this, so it's a bit more closer to the edge, and you see it because you always check this ladder here. Then you know that you have to skip the very first chain and you start from the second one. So you would skip this one and you start here. But in this case, of course, we need to repeat the first row. So we start from the very first top chain. Okay, and you basically keep repeating this pattern over and over again until you get to the length that you want. The very last thing that I would like to show you is how to bind off the Tunisian top loop stitch. No matter what repeat you made for your last row, you will always bind in pattern with row 1. So that means that we go into that the very first top loop between the first and second stitch, and we make a slip stitch in there. And then we go into the next and we repeat, and we keep going until the very end, with the exception that, so as for any repeat of row 1, you skip the very the last top loop between the semi-last and the last stitch, and you directly work a slip stitch under the last stitch. So here we skip this last top loop, we go under both vertical bars of the last stitch, and we work one more slip stitch. And our swatch is complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or on my photo tutorial on my blog. I will leave the link in the description. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more crochet tutorials. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!